right, time to bring in the panel. Gideon Rozner from the Institute of Public Affairs and Carolyn De Rosso, litigation lawyer and political commentator. Gideon, Carolyn, welcome to the desk.
Lovely to be here.
Good to have you.
Great to be here, Chris.
Good, Gideon. I know I'm going to get to New Zealand with you in just a second because you've been ready to fire on that subject. But I want to talk about what I just spoke about, which was the rollout and the slowness of the rollout. Were you reassured by the way the Prime Minister summed up our circumstances today, or is there a little bit more explanation or explaining to do?
Look, I think I'm not averse to criticising the Morrison government. I think I have a whack at him as much as I have a whack at Labor these days. But I don't think Scott Morrison is to blame for the slowness of this rollout. It is very slow, and on the current trajectory, it won't be completed until 2024. But I don't think it's a supply issue here. There are 2 million doses only, of which 500,000 have been used. As far as I can tell, it seems to be a problem with the states. Even the ABC has reported on the fact that here in Melbourne, where I am, vaccination centres are sitting largely empty as frontline workers have not been booked in. But I think the other problem, and this is the more fundamental problem, Chris, is that the take-up rate has been low. People are just not rushing out to get this thing. And we have to face facts here. People are scared. Now, I'm not saying that is right. I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm not saying that is informed. I'm not saying that is misinformed. But there are serious doubts about the safety of these vaccines that and if the federal government has put a foot wrong, I think it's not addressing the safety concerns of ordinary people. You know, on my Facebook page last night, I asked people what they thought about the vaccine rollout, and I got about 150 comments back, and almost all of them were either strongly opposed to the vaccine or at the very least scared about it. I think that continuing to sneer at people and say, oh, no, you're wrong. Don't believe what you read. So-and-so, the mid-level bureaucrat, knows better than you do. I don't think that's the right course. And if the government doesn't do a better job at talking to people rather than at them, we're never going to get through this thing.
Yeah, he makes a very good point, Carolyn, in that we've had the politics of the rollout almost every day with people scratching and screaming and carrying on and using words about distraction and all of that. Maybe we need a lot more medics in front of a camera and explaining exactly what the latest side effect means and whether we should be worried about it.
And I think if you've got more independent people talking about this and less politicians blaming each other, I think that will help public confidence. But at the moment, it is this continual blame game. And also, the other thing that I haven't really loved about the Morrison approach to this is there's been a lot of promising and what feels like now not as much delivering. So I think if OK, these doses didn't arrive. Well, what was the plan B? You can't tell me there wasn't a plan B in case there was a supply issue. We've had a whole 12 months of supply issues. Why wasn't that factored in? And you need to level up with the Australian people with an independent view of what's going on.
Yeah, our hopes came up quite high at the beginning and a little bit too high. OK, Gideon, this is your big chance. I worry about this New Zealand-Australia bubble. It took her probably a lot longer than it should have. She should have signed off on this about a month ago. I got a feeling here that we're going to see pause after pause of various flights into various states. What's your gut feel?
Chris, you nailed it earlier. As far as I can tell, this will be just as seamless and as convenient and as easy as it is to go from Melbourne to the Gold Coast or something, i.e. not very. This is rubbish. It's worse than nothing. And as far as I understand it, it'll go a little something like this. You can book a holiday to New Zealand, you can pay for a holiday to New Zealand, but if there's 1 or 2 cases in Auckland and Jacinda Ardern decides to shut down half the country again, then good luck getting there. Now, if you land in New Zealand and there's an outbreak back at home, well, as we all know, you'll have trouble getting home as well. If you're in the air and there's an outbreak, then back where you've come from, then as soon as you land, it's off to mandatory detention. Hotel quarantine for you. And by the way, these outbreaks only ever seem to happen around school holidays or major sporting events or New Year's Eve or something. So, plan on travelling off peak. And even if the planets align and you finally get your holiday to New Zealand, the best you can hope for is paying through the nose for a heavily inflated airfare to sit in seat 27F in New Zealand, Air New Zealand economy, wearing for hours on end, wearing this disgusting, saliva-ridden, disease-ridden, dehumanising, undignified face nappy. So, forgive me, Jacinda, but I don't think I'll be taking advantage of the Trans-Tasman bubble anytime soon.
That was worth waiting for. I love that. All right, Carolyn, have you been online to see what was available?
I haven't even bothered looking. So I went to Canberra a couple of weeks ago. I've managed to venture to Sydney now. They're business trips. I'm not going to consider overseas travel, let alone overseas tourism.
Even to New Zealand?
Even to New Zealand. Well, not when you've got Mark McGowan as your Premier.
Yes.
Because the chances of me getting locked out of my state are probably greater than anyone else getting locked out of their state.
And you'll be therefore stranded either in New Zealand or on the East Coast?
Until such time as, you know, he feels like he'll let us back in. It's just not worth it.
OK. Final word, Gideon, to you. Malcolm Turnbull.
Never been a fan. I've always known he was bad, Chris. I was the Hunter S. Thompson to Malcolm Turnbull's Richard Nixon for years and years and years, and sadly I'm vindicated over and over and over again. I mean, look, he talks about thuggery. Well, what one man's thuggery is another man's accountability. Journalists raising very real issues like perceived conflicts of interest, like the fact that he's never landed a successful energy policy ever. You know, really and truly, you know, asking about thuggery when it comes to Brendan Nelson and Peter King and Tony Abbott and Peter Credlin and people like that. I mean, the guy, you know, it's just getting sad now.
Would Scott Morrison be nervous tonight about those numbers that show that the coalition has lost male support in WA, Queensland, and it's a basket case in South Australia too?
Yeah, well, it doesn't look good. And obviously just coming out the back of the West Australian election, we have seen that real move to Labor, particularly when the coalition starts to move towards greener energy policies. So what really helped us in the last election in in Queensland and in Western Australia was being able to differentiate ourselves against Labor on energy policy. Now, the people of Western Australia can differentiate between federal and state politics, but they know when policy rhymes. So if we start to get flip-flopping on policy and we start to get too much softening so far as the resource sector goes, energy policy goes, then that there is going to affect the vote.
OK, Carolyn, thank you for coming in. Gideon, thank you for your time. All the best.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, Cara.